Good morning, all of you. In today's session, we are going to start with CSIR NET JRF Chemical Science, June 2014, Part C, Series 2. Earlier, we completed 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 academic year, both the sessions including June and December, CSIR NET question papers. All the detailed solved question papers are available on the channel called World of Competitive Chemistry. This kind of standard previous year question paper discussion will fetching you towards research aspiration and any competitive exams if you are preparing, and any entrance examinations. So for all this kind of discussion will help you because question paper pattern, weightage of the questions, which chapters get more priority, what will be the analogy to solve the questions, and what will be the weightage for each and every chapter. Everything will be clearly analyzed by using such a previous year question paper discussion. Let us go to our today's concept. Series 2 of CSIR NET JRF Chemical Science, June 2014, Part C, consisting questions from 81 to 90. Let us start with question number 81. Proton NMR spectrum of NETA5 C5H5 rhodium C2H4 taken twice. This is a complex taken at minus 20 degrees centigrade shows a typical A prime X prime pattern in the olefinic region. On increasing the temperature to 70 degrees, separate lines collapsed into a single line, which is due to. Okay. At minus 20, what happens? You can find two distinguishable signals. That is purely because of fluxionality is absent in that case. Okay. What is mean by fluxionality? Fluxionality is nothing but interchanging the position of ligands because there is a flexibility among the bonds, right? Axial becomes equatorial and equatorial bonds can be turned into axial condition. That is called fluxionality. So that is available whenever we are rising the temperature, they will have the free rotation around the bond so that there is a interchanging in position, and all the protons in ethylene becomes equivalent, being all are interchanging. So we can't predict which proton belongs to which ethylene molecule. So that proton NMR of that kind of ethylene will be equivalent in nature, so that we will get a single signal at 70 degrees. Because of free rotation availability and induction of fluxionality in the molecule. Whenever minus 20 degrees is there, at minus 20, what happens? Molecule is totally rigid in nature. At that conditions, bonds are highly restricted and the rotation is completely prohibited, so that all are stagnant in nature. Two ethylene behaves like a two different set of atoms, different set of molecules, and we will get two different set of signals for these corresponding ethylene molecule, because lack of free rotation is possible at minus 20. But 70 degrees, that will facilitate free rotation of ethylene ligand, so that fluxionality can be induced and all are considered as a single set, and we will get a single signal for that kind. For question number 81, correct answer will be option number 1. Let us move on to question number 82. The nuclide among the following capable of undergoing fission by thermal neutrons, which will participate in the fission reaction by thermal neutrons. In general, all the nuclear reactions are broadly classified into two types. One is nuclear fission, second is nuclear fusion. Fission in the sense, if you are taking any bulky compound, bulky atom, by bombarding with the thermal neutron, that will be fragmented into the smaller particle along with the emission of large extent of energy is called fission. Whenever small particles get combined to give the larger one along with the emission of uncontrolled amount of energy is called a fusion reaction. Right? So the sunlight is a fundamental source of our energy, is based upon this nuclear fusion reaction, and it becomes a heliocentric in nature. Right? So here they are asking about nuclear fission upon thermal neutron bombardment. Which kind of nucleus will participate in these reactions? The condition for fission is if the center of the nucleus is highly unstable, in that case, upon bombarding with the small tiny particle of neutron, that will be fragmented into a smaller parts along with the liberation of large extent of energy and radiation, right? So most obviously, uranium-233, uranium-235, plutonium-239 will participate in this kind of nuclear fission rather than thorium-232. So being it is highly stable, will not facilitate such kind of fission reaction. Let us go with the detailed discussion of these three moieties, how they will participate in the fission reaction. Upon bombarding uranium-233 with the thermal neutron, there is a formation of uranium-234, in turn turned into two fragmented species like xenon and strontium, along with the release of three thermal neutrons. These three thermal neutrons will facilitate the chain reaction further, and continuation of nuclear fission will be proceeded, so that we will get a continuation of the reaction. So this uranium will participate in this kind of fission. But 94% of uranium-233 proceed with this kind of nuclear fission reaction. In another 6% will bombarded with neutron that will participate in the absorption rather than fission. This is a kind of fission, and the remaining 6% will participate in the absorption, capture of neutrons, and gamma rays emission is possible from that excited nucleus. So in both the ways, uranium-233 will participate in the nuclear fission reaction. And next is about uranium-235. It is the most abundantly available and most commonly employed metal or element for nuclear fission reaction. Most commonly employed element for nuclear fission is uranium-235. Uranium-235, upon bombarding with thermal neutron, first it got captured that neutron and turned into uranium-236. Later, it will fragmented into two equal halves, probably equal halves. One is barium, second is about krypton, along with the emission of three thermal neutrons. And these three thermal neutrons will continue the chain of the reaction, and the fission reaction will be continuously progressed. In this manner, uranium-235, by bombarding with the thermal neutron, uranium-236 in turn break down into barium and krypton, along with the liberation of three thermal neutrons. So another one is plutonium-239. It is a kind of nucleus. By bombarding with the neutron, corresponding two equal halves got generated, and which will participate in the nuclear fission reaction. In this manner, uranium-233, uranium-235, plutonium-239 are the kind of species will participate in the nuclear fission, most probably, but not thorium-232. A, B, C are the suitable answers for this question. They are provided in the option number D. For question number 82, option number 4 is the correct answer. Let us move on to question number 83. The use of dynamic inert atmosphere in the thermogravimetric analysis. Thermogravimetric analysis is the technique where a variation in the mass linearly with the temperature can be continuously monitored. How the mass of the species will be varied by changing the temperature, that kind of gravimetric analysis is the kind called thermogravimetric analysis, TGA. Right. In this thermogravimetric analysis, if we are imbibing an inert atmosphere, that inert atmosphere most probably nitrogen gas will be bubbled into that. So that thermogravimetric analysis that will reduce the decomposition temperature. For example, if enolite is decomposed at 50 degrees, in the presence of inert atmosphere, that will be reduced to 40 degrees even. In that way, reducing the temperature of decomposition of enolite under examination is possible by imbibing this inert atmosphere into that species. So in TGA, inert atmosphere will facilitate reducing the decomposition temperature that is provided in option number 1. For question number 83, option number 1 is the correct answer. Let us move on to question number 84. The correct statement for halocathode lamp from the following. Halocathode lamp is most commonly employed in atomic absorption spectroscopy. Atomic absorption spectroscopy in the typical diagram is provided here. 100 to 200 volts of current is employed into this, and halocathode that can be filled with any element of the interest, whatever element you want. Otherwise, you can take the alloy of mixture of metals even, that can be filled into this halocathode. And anode is made up of specifically either tungsten, zirconium, or nickel can be used for the making of this anodic compartment. And here, this entire system was kept in the quartz bulb. Quartz window will be there, and this cylindrical tube is filled with the inert gas, either neon or argon, were filled of 1 to 2 torr pressure conditions. This is about the entire setup of what atomic absorption spectroscopy, where halo cathode lamp can be employed. That is given in the option number 1. And in case of this atomic absorption spectroscopy, always you will get a narrow peaks instead of broad peaks, and it pointed peaks will be appeared in case of this one. So whenever lamp becomes very hard, it is not possible to emit the radiation, and atomic absorption will not facilitate the type of reaction that will become unfit for this atomic absorption spectroscopy to give the light source. So here C is also correct statement. Whenever transition elements were taken, they will impart the long life instead of short life. So option number 4 is the wrong one. Only A, B, C are the correct statements with respect to halo cathode lamp. For question number 84, A, B, C that are provided in option number A. So for question number 84, option number 1 is the correct answer. Let us move on to question number 85. Identify the correct statement about nickel hexa-aqua plus 2, copper hexa-aqua plus 2. These two are the octahedral complexes of transition metals. Nickel of D8 system, copper of D9 system, right? So what are the correct statements we have to predict? Whenever nickel hexa-aqua complex was taken, it is inclined in the regular octahedral diagram. All the equatorial and axial bonds are exactly equal, being it is a green color compound, and it is symmetrically filled. How it will be symmetrical, let us see in detail. In case of D8 system of nickel plus 2 electrons, how many? 8 electrons are there. T2G, being it is octahedral, T2G are laying at a low level, and Eg energy will be raised in this manner. D8 system, it will be 1, 2, 3. And what will be the ligand here? The ligand is water, being it is the weak field ligand, high spin complex, it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then 6th electron will enter into T2G, 7, 8. This will be the pattern of electron filling in D8 system. And T2G completely symmetrically filled, all orbitals are completely occupied. Eg orbitals are half filled. Again, you can say it is the symmetrically filled one. Wherever symmetrically filled T2G Eg orbitals are available, in that case, Jahn-Teller distortion is not at all possible. And this molecule occupies the regular octahedral, and all the bonds are naturally non-distorted and exactly equivalent in nature, because all are symmetrically filled. So when you observe the second complex, copper hexa-aqua plus 2, when copper hexa-aqua plus 2 was considered, D9 system, filling of electrons in accordance, again here it is of high spin complex, 1, 2, 3, 4th electron enters into Eg, 5th electrons also into Eg, 6th electron into T2G, 7, 8, 9th electron will enter into Eg orbital. Now T2G becomes a completely symmetrically filled one. Eg orbital is unsymmetrically filled. Eg orbital partially half filled system is there, so here asymmetry is there in Eg orbital. It will facilitate Jahn-Teller distortion. Jahn-Teller distortion, the compulsory condition is either T2G or Eg orbital should be asymmetrically filled, then only Jahn-Teller distortion is possible. So because of this reason, asymmetric filling of Eg orbital in the copper, there is a possibility of Jahn-Teller distortion. You can observe this kind of lack of degeneracy among the d orbitals. Dz square is low laying, dx square minus y square is going up. Z down configuration will be there, and you can observe that axial bonds are elongated. Axial bonds are elongated, and equatorial bonds are laying in their own place only. 193 picometers is the bond length between the equatorial bonds, and axial bond length is raised because of Jahn-Teller distortion. That will be elongated to 227 picometers. So this will be given for copper hexa-aqua complex, being it is Jahn-Teller distorted one. Here all the angles are not exactly equal. Axial bonds are longer when compared to equatorial bonds, but in case of nickel, being it is symmetrical molecule, Jahn-Teller distortion will not be observed. So the correct option, all nickel oxygen bond lengths are equal, while copper oxygen equatorial bonds are shorter compared to copper oxygen axial bonds. So here you can clearly observe axial bonds are somewhat elongated, they stretched out. So Z out configuration will be there because of Jahn-Teller distortion, being it is asymmetrically filled one. So Correct. Reason is provided in option number 3. For question number 85, option number 3. Let us move on to question number 86. Reaction of nitrosyl tetrafluoroborate to Vasca's complex give the complex A. Angle MNO is 124 degrees. The complex A and its NO stretching frequency are respectively, right? So NO stretching frequency to be predicted for this molecule. Here is the clear description for Vasca's complex reaction with this nitrosyl boron tetrafluoride. Nitrosyl is nothing but N triple bond O positive is called a nitrosyl group, and BF3 being it is Lewis acid, when it is bounded with a fluorine, it turned into a tetrahedral BF4 minus counter ion, which used to neutralize the charge present on the nitrosyl positive charged ion. Now it is treated with the square planar complex of iridium, that is called Vasca's complex. Vasca's complex where iridium surrounded by 1 chloro, 1 carbonyl, and 2 triphenyl phosphine moieties are present. Upon treating, what happens? Nitrosyl group will enter into this. Initially, it is tetra coordinated. Now it is converted into penta coordinated complex. Around iridium, you can find 5 bonds. 5 bonds are there. It is said to be a pentacovalent molecule and counterbalanced by BA4 minus. This is a compound formed, and a nitrosyl group will stretch at 1620 centimeter inverse. So if we go with carbonyl stretching, that will be at 1900. Nitrosyl stretching will be observed at 1620 centimeter inverse. That is only provided in the option number 1. Here, iridium, chloro, CO, NO, PPH3 taken twice BF4. That is the complex what we are described in the complex form. Iridium, chloro, nitro, carbonyl, PPH3 taken twice BF4 minus. This is a complex form, and a nitrosyl group will stretch at 1620 centimeter inverse. Correct answer will be option number 1 for question number 86. Let us move on to question number 87. The correct order of decreasing electronegativity of the following atoms. Electronegativity is nothing but the tendency to hold the electrons, to pull electrons towards the atom is called electronegativity. Tendency to attract the electrons is called negativity. Electronegativity is linked with the metallic nature. If metallic nature, electronegativity will be lower. They will be assigned with electropositive nature. More the electronegativity, greater will be the non-metallic nature, that will become non-metallic in nature. Highest electronegative element in the periodic table will be fluorine with a 4 electronegativity value. And when you observe the given elements like sulfur, arsenic, aluminum, calcium, so greater the metallic nature, lesser will be the electronegativity character. Among all, the more basic one is alkaline earth metal calcium. So that calcium electronegativity will be least, that is available only in the option number 2 rather than remaining all. So it's very clear. So by finding only metallic nature, so that you can easily identify the electronegativity of the given element, and being sulfur is non-metallic in nature and SE8 system, and it will be associated with higher electronegativity. There is a relation between metallic nature and electronegativity. Greater the metallic nature, lesser will be the electronegativity. Obviously, calcium, being it is strong metal, so its electronegativity will be least. Sulfur, non-metal, its electronegativity will be highest. Later, arsenic and metalloid, aluminum, and the least will be for calcium. This is clearly depicted in the periodic table, which in turn given by the electronegativity of the elements only. And let us compare all the elements. Sulfur is attributed with 2.58 electronegativity value, higher among all the given elements. After sulfur, we have arsenic. Where is arsenic? Arsenic is 2.18. 2.18, again it is the larger, but next to the sulfur. And in chronology, next element with the aluminum, that is 1.6. And the least will be imparted for calcium, that is 1.0. What's the order? Sulfur, subsequently arsenic, and the next followed by aluminum, and the least is imparted for calcium. This will be the order which is exactly provided in the option number B. For question number 87, option number 2 is the correct answer. This purely related with the electronegativity and metallic nature, periodic properties, right? So option number 2 is the correct answer. Let us move on to question number 88. A 1:2 mixture of dimethyl NCH2 CH2 PPH2 and potassium thiocyanate with K2 palladium Cl4 gives a square planar complex A. Identify the correct pair of donor atom trans to each other in complex A from the following. Okay, so here cis complex, actually it should be cis complex rather than trans, because there is a cis orientation between the phosphorus and nitrogen. So correct answer will be PN, and that is given in the cis conformation. So when we link up all these with this palladium square planar complex, let us see how it could be. When we are taking palladium tetrachloro, so potassium tetrachloropalladate 4, palladate 2, sorry, potassium tetrachloropalladate 2 it will be, and upon treating with the two different ligands, one is a chelating ligand and 2 moles of potassium thiocyanate is required in order to give 2 monodentate ligands, and here is the complex we generated between palladium and 2 different ligands, and one side palladium is chelated with this nitrogen phosphorus containing ligand. So this is known as, this is a heterodentate ligand. So one is nitrogen and either is phosphorus, and in either side SSCN moieties are present, because SSCN being it is 1 electron pair donor, so that it is a monodentate and 2 single bonds will be generated. In this way, again square planar complex got generated by replacing all 4 chloro with a new incoming ligands. When we observe the complex, here nitrogen and phosphorus laying on the same side, so that they are in the cis conformation. Nitrogen, phosphorus are in the cis conformation, that is available in the option number 1. For question number 88, option number 1 is the correct answer. Let us move on to question number 89. It is a part of, again, nuclear chemistry, where a low energy nuclear reaction magnesium 24 by beta decay and alpha decay that turned into sodium 22. The correct statement from the following are. So what is the correct statement and what will be the correct answer we have to depict? It is a kind of system. Magnesium turned into sodium by emitting beta particle by emitting alpha particle as well. And 24 of magnesium turned into 22. Let us see in detail discussion. So here alpha decay. So any X particle with the A atomic mass, Z atomic number, this behaves like a parent element, and alpha emission leads to form A minus 4 X prime, Z minus 2. This is a daughter element generated by the emission of alpha particle, right? So alpha particle emission, always the mass number will be reduced by 4 units, and atomic number will be reduced by 2 units, because alpha particle is nothing but helium nucleus, right? That's the reason by here the daughter element there will be deficiency of 4 mass number, and 2 atomic number will be reduced. And moreover, beta particle emission is possible. There is a addition of one of the proton will be possible. Upon emitting one beta particle, one of the atomic number will be added without interfering with mass. Being a beta particle emission is nothing but electron emission. Electron is massless, so that here mass will not be impacted by this kind of emission reaction, right? So that 24 to 22 is possible. In this reaction, alpha decay is possible, and beta decay, which leads to give the increasing the atomic number by 1 unit. Kinetic energy of D particle is not fully available for the exciting of magnesium. So here D particle is not giving the sufficient energy for the excitation of magnesium, right? Total number of protons and neutrons are conserved. So here you can clearly observe that 24 turned into 22, because here 24 to 22, what happens? Alpha emission is possible. During this alpha emission, mass number is changed by 2 units, and one of the alpha particle is also emitted. That's why here there is no difference in its proton number and also neutron number. Everything is conserved in the reaction. We got exact calculation of alpha particle emission, and whatever protons and neutrons present within the parent element and a daughter element, right? And moreover, total number of protons, neutrons conserved, this we discussed just now. Q value of the nuclear reaction is much higher than the magnitude relative to the heat of the chemical reaction. What is mean by Q value? Q value is nothing but whenever nuclear reaction got carried, the difference between the sum of masses from initial reactant to product. What is the difference between the mass? That is denoted as a Q value. In case of this nuclear reaction, Q value will be higher when compared to heat of the reaction. What is meant by heat of the reaction? So how extent of energy got absorbed or released during the conversion of reactant into product is called the heat of the reaction. So in case of this nuclear reaction, obviously, the Q value will be higher when compared to heat of the reaction emitted during the process. So C is also correct one. Threshold energy is lesser than Q value is the wrong one. Threshold energy will be higher than Q value. Threshold energy will be higher than Q value. What is mean by threshold energy? Threshold energy is nothing but the suitable energy which is required for facilitating this nuclear fission reaction. So that is called a threshold energy. The sufficient energy whichever required to facilitate or participate the molecule in the nuclear reaction is called a threshold energy. That will be greater when compared to Q value, right? So option number D is the wrong statement. A, B, C are the correct statements that are provided in option number A. For question number 18 and option number 1 is the correct answer. Let us move on to question number 90. At pH 7, zinc ion and the carbonic anhydrous reacts with carbon dioxide to give. This is a kind of system where bio inorganic chemistry question was given, where carbonic anhydrase, this is a kind of enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. Carbonic anhydrase, upon treating with carbon dioxide, that in turn converted into bicarbonate and carbonate got generated. Let us see the entire cycle process of this carbonic anhydrase reaction in order to generate the bicarbonate. First, we are taking a zinc central metal containing 3 histidine moieties containing water molecule containing enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. This is the enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. This carbonic anhydrase is removing one of the H place and turned into OH minus. OH minus got generated. This is having electron rich nature. Now it will be bounded with carbon dioxide, central carbon, because the two oxygens are pulling electrons towards them, so that electron deficiency is originated on carbon atom. So this electron deficiency and the carbon will bind with the oxygen atom. So this negative charge in the oxygen will bind to carbon, subsequently pi bond shifted towards oxygen, so that there is a formation of oxygen carbon linkage. This is the most important thing we have to know. From this only you can get the answer. Carbon oxygen linkage is possible, and this negative charge present on the oxygen will bind to zinc, so in order to attain the electrical neutrality. So there is a bond formation which is denoted with the dotted line because it is not a complete bond. So there is a such kind of interactions will be generated, and finally that will participate in the removal of bicarbonate and retention of carbonic anhydrase enzyme is possible, right? So in this reaction, oxygen directly linked with the carbon atom. This is given in the option number 1. In option number 2, zinc linked with carbon, entirely wrong. Zinc linked with oxygen of the carbon dioxide. This is also entirely wrong. Zinc linked with 2 oxygens, one oxygen of enzyme, another oxygen of carbon dioxide, and a bridged compound got generated. It is also entirely wrong. Only the correct structure will be carbon dioxide directly linked with the oxygen of this carbonic anhydrase enzyme. That is provided in the option number 1. For question number 90, option number 1 is the correct answer. By this, we completed entire series consisting questions from 81 to 90. Series 2 is successfully completed. Hope this session will be very much helpful for your preparation. Thank you very much for your patience listening. Thank you one and all.